welcome. God. Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi there. Why can't I start a video without, just like a normal person? And just say, hi, welcome to the Evening Reader. My name is Priscilla. How are you today? There, I did it. See how easy that was? I tell you. I was getting it right on the first try. Well, that's okay. Thought that I would pop on today and talk about reading lately, just a little bit. Not gonna, I think about doing these videos and then I start thinking about, I want to talk about what I read. I want to talk about what I'm reading. I want to talk about my stack of books that I might read. I want to talk about all of it. I'm going to talk about everything. And I don't have to talk about everything. I don't have to talk about everything. I can break it up. I don't have to talk about everything at once. Okay. I think we all agree on that. All right. So I did think, though, that I would talk about the two books that I read in May. And maybe I'll talk a little bit. We'll see how long I yammer on. Talk a little bit about, yes, two books. Yes, two books in May. You didn't hear that incorrectly. And then talk about what I have read so far in June. Actually, I may have read one of these starting at the end of May, but I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Anyway, yeah, so I thought that I would I'll jump right in. I'll just jump right in. I mean, why not? So in May, this is a gorgeous cover. This book has such a gorgeous cover. I read as a buddy read with Roz from Scallydandling About the Books and with Sarah from Roadworthy. I read Rónán Hession's, I think that's how you say his name. Rónán. I'll put a video down below has the correct pronunciation of his name in it, because the wonderful Shawn, Shawn Breeds Books, actually did an interview with Mr. Hession about Ghost Mountain, about this book. And yeah, Roz and Sarah and I read this as a buddy read. Which is terrific. They're always such a pleasure to read with. And we kind of we all went at our own pace and getting through the book. We had Sarah had set up a schedule for us, but we were all kind of reading at different paces. And, but it was still great to talk about. What is Ghost Mountain about? First, let me say, we'd all read Leonard and Hungry Paul, which was a lot of you have read, a lot of booktubers have read and talked about. It made a lot of favorite lists last year, I think maybe in the year before. So it's one of those books that's really beloved by a lot of booktubers. And for good reason. It made one of my favorites lists. I think it made it this last year. 2024. What is that? A different world. So, hearing that he had a new book out was really exciting, and thought, for sure, would definitely want to pick up anything by him. I haven't read his other novel. Let's see if it has it here. Panenka. It looks like Panenka was actually his second novel. Leonard and Hungry Paul was his first novel. Sarah has read all three. I can't remember if Roz has read all three. I have only read Leonard and Hungry Paul, and now Ghost Mountain. And so Ghost Mountain, I have to tell you, I'm going to tell you just right from the get-go that Ghost Mountain's a very different book than Leonard and Hungry Paul. I'm just going to lay it out there. Because you may have expectations. If you've read that book, you may have expectations about how this book is going to be. It's not anything like that, which is totally fine. Not a problem at all. Lots of authors, especially, they have their first book and then they go on and their next couple of books, or they're doing something different. They're trying new things. It's all good. It's not a problem at all. So Ghost Mountain is about a mountain that appears in a fictional town in Ireland, um, and how that appearance of the mountain sort of affects the people who live around it or live nearby or not. And that's pretty much the book. Why am I laughing? Uh, this is, I just don't know. It was very, I really enjoyed listening to the interview that Shawn did, and it gave me some insight into sort of where he was going with this book. I would say, to a degree, you do see some of the same elements in this book that you see in the Hungry Paul sections. You read, you experienced in the Hungry Paul sections of Leonard and Hungry Paul, I think. But this book is slightly darker. And it's very much, he said in his interview with Shawn, if I remember correctly, that his idea was sort of really almost in a way sort of exploring the indifference of the natural world to humans and human time and human concerns, but then on the flip side, how humans can imbue meaning, imbue nature, or certain happenings or things that happen in the natural world with meaning, and our need to do so. And this book it's multi-point of view. There are several different characters. And it's really, different ways that the mountain and how the other characters and the mountain all they affect each other's lives. I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't want to recount the entire plot. And actually there isn't much of a plot. It's sort of, it spans a good deal of time. I would say, I think it spans about 25 years, the book. But it doesn't really have a plot. It's very much these slices of what's happening in these characters' lives. And the writing style is unusual because it's sort of a plodding style. It's not a very lyrical style, or there aren't, I don't think that the writing is very good, but it's very plodding very often. It feels very much sort of like sometimes getting through life can feel. And yeah, it's, I have to say, it was not the easiest book to get through. I did not dislike it maybe as much as Angelia at Read and Reread did. She really did not get on with it at all. I completely understand why. It's a difficult book. It's probably not a book that if you're feeling down, maybe that you want to pick up. It's a kind of a dark book. It's not that there's not some light and hope and even some humor. He has a very dry wit, and that definitely, that comes through in Leonard and Hungry Paul a great deal more. But it is here. It is here in this book. And this just feels very much like an exploration of how different people really deal with life and the world. And somewhat that is symbolized by the sudden appearance of this mountain. And people have different ideas about why the mountain appears, and they do different things about it, and some people don't care about it at all. And for some people it's just kind of an amusement, and for other people it's more there's something there. You know, they want to believe that there's something there. And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting book. This is not a very great review. Anyway, yeah, so it was a really great experience. And like Sarah, who had read all three of his books, had pointed out that she thought maybe the prose style was similar in Leonard and Hungry Paul. And I haven't gone back to look, honestly, um, because, you know, she's read all three of his books. So, yeah. Uh, it was an enjoy. It was. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say it was an enjoyable experience. It's a dark book. To me, I felt like it was nihilistic almost, um, with moments of really interesting clarity and then some beauty also, some connections. But altogether a different book, a darker book, I think. So make of that what you will. But I think it's fair to say, you know, forewarned is fair warned, or foretold is, yeah, whatever. Whatever. So after that, and I'm not sure why I didn't. Lately it seems like I feel very like pulled in 10 different directions. I feel like I'm reading a lot of books at one time, or I'm trying to, um, or that I have a lot of books on the go, or at the very least, I have a lot of books that I've started and still feel like I want to get back to, but I haven't gone back to. Um, did I mention one of those is River East, River West? I can't remember the name of the author. Aube Ray Aube something Ray. I can't. God, I'm terrible. I'll hopefully. So I started that, was really enjoying it. It's quite good, but I haven't gone back to it. I think I'm about 30% of the way through. I was reading it on my Kindle. I'd started Leviathan by Paul Auster. I still have not picked that back up again. So I need to get back to those. But then I've managed to finish a couple of like three other books. And part of that has to do with what other things that are going on and kind of where my interests have been. But on a whim, I bought this book. I have been following the author of this book and her bookstore on Instagram for a good long while, particularly the bookstore. And the bookstore is the bookshelf in Thomasville, Georgia. And the Instagram account is Bookshelf Tville, so I'll leave the link to that down below. And then the proprietor is Annie B. Jones, which she owns the bookstore with her husband and family. She runs the bookstore herself. And this is her book that she wrote, and it's called Ordinary Time: Lessons Learned While Staying Put. And I just really enjoy. She also has a podcast called From the Front Porch, which I also really enjoy. But I just really enjoy her Instagram account and her personal account, and have a lot of in common in terms of reading tastes and books they feature and things. But I also just am really, how do I say this? Just sometimes when I'm feeling homesick, I or maybe I was just feeling homesick and I thought that I wanted to read this book. Um, and it's a really lovely book of essays. And it's in three different sections. She's got staying friends, staying put, and staying faithful, staying grounded, and staying you. And just these lovely little essays about her family and her friends. And, her thing is that she grew up in the northern part of Florida, in Tallahassee, Florida, and had big dreams that she was going to move to New York City and go to college and become a journalist and become a hard-hitting, serious print journalist. And she ended up, going to school, growing up in Tallahassee, going to school in Alabama, to a small private Christian college, and where she met the man who would become her husband. She got married right after college. They moved back to Tallahassee so her husband could attend law school at Florida State, and then ended up working for kind of a branch of the bookstore, the bookshelf, in Tallahassee. Was it in Tallahassee or another nearby little town? Anyway, a branch of it. And then the branch closed, and she was really sort of devastated. And then it turned out that the bookshelf came up for sale, and the owner was interested in having her buy the bookstore. And so they bought the bookstore, and they moved to Thomasville, Georgia, which is probably, I don't know by miles, but I think she says it's about an hour by car from where she grew up. So she's not very far from her family, and she's now in this little town and learning to live in a little town, because Tallahassee is it's not a huge city, but it's a big town, and it has a huge school. So it's got a large transient student population, and there's a lot going on there. And here she now has moved to Thomasville, Georgia, which is a little town, and taking over a bookstore that was sort of a beloved bookstore of the town. The person who had owned it previously was from Thomasville, was a local, and having to learn to kind of become, if part of the town, and also in some ways learning that she was just never really going to be completely part of the town, that she's not, it takes time, but that she's still not even quite a local, although definitely more so after, I think, 12 years than when she first moved there. And then at the same time, she was having a crisis of faith, because she was breaking up with her childhood church, and feeling like there were a lot of problems there, that she was facing, and having a really hard time. Both she and her husband were feeling that they needed to get away from that church that just was not aligning with who they felt they were as people and what their beliefs were about the world. And so when they are also in Thomasville, they go looking for a church. But she also talks a lot about making friends, and about how she has always been a best friend person, or a one friend person. And then how difficult that was even just growing up, but that's sort of how she is and who she is. And then when they moved to Thomasville, or first when they moved back to Tallahassee after college, and then when they moved to Thomasville, how she had to do the really difficult work of trying to make friends as an adult, and build a friend group. And she built a friend group in Tallahassee, and it was mostly full of students, like graduate students and young professionals, and everybody ended up moving away. So, but she moved to Thomasville, and had to then try to figure out how to make friends again. And as somebody who lives in a place, I can completely identify in a lot of ways with moving to a small town where everybody knows each other. Amsterdam is, it's not a small town, except that in a way, the part of Amsterdam I live in is a small town. And it is very difficult to figure out how to make friends not only when sometimes there's a language barrier, but there are also even still cultural barriers between, and also it's very simply often because you move to a place where people live and they've grown up here. Like, for example, my neighbor upstairs, he was born here. He's lived in Amsterdam his whole life. He went to the University of Amsterdam. He's the same age as my husband and myself. And, he has his friends. He has his friend group. Most of the people that he went to school with, they still live here. They raise their families here. And so it's not that people want to keep you out necessarily, but it's just that they have their friend groups already. They already have their life set up. And then but there is sort of the language and the cultural differences. And even, making friends here, most of the friends that I've made here are from the UK. So there's even that other layer. Some of those people have lived only in the UK and the Netherlands. Some have lived in other countries besides the Netherlands. Some are married to people from the UK. Some are married to Dutch people. So there's a lot of, there are still those cultural differences, and the references and the things that you grew up with. And sometimes not having that and not having that familiarity can be difficult because you kind of feel like people don't necessarily always get you. And so she talks about that, a little bit about that. She talks a lot about her family. And she talks about reading. She talks about books. She talks about TV shows. It's really just, it's a lighthearted, although there's some serious stuff in here as well. It's kind of a lighthearted, lovely look at just maybe life not being what you thought it was going to be, maybe not being the person you thought you were going to be, but also recognizing how things have worked out and maybe you are where you need to be and you're doing maybe what you need to do. And I just think it's just a wonderful message. And she writes really well and she's got a good sense of humor. I really identify with her in a lot of ways. Personality wise, we're somewhat similar, and especially in terms of tending to be more loners that she is. And it's very cute. She and her husband just had a baby. So when she talks about that in here, she wasn't sure at all if she was going to have children or if that was going to be in the plans or be a thing that happened for her and her husband. And they did end up having a little boy later in life, like I think she's like 39 or 40. So yeah, so really a lovely, lovely little book on just about life. And it was kind of a nice palate cleanser after Ghost Mountain, which was a little bit rough. So yeah, so that was my May reading, and yeah, only two books. I'm trying to decide, I think I'm gonna save the other books. I think I'm gonna talk about them in a different video maybe, and I'll just kind of end it here and just call this my May wrap up. Anyway, I hope that you are doing well out there, and let me know in the comments if you think you're gonna read Ghost Mountain, if it sounds interesting to you. I really don't. I probably sound more negative. I wouldn't say don't read it. It's not a negative review in the sense that I would say definitely don't read this book. I would say read this book, and if you do read it, definitely watch Shawn's interview with the author, because it's a really great kind of peek into what he was thinking about when he was writing it. and a little bit about Leonard and Hungry Paul, and then just about writing in general. And it also features, and I'm not going to remember her name. I'm going to have to put the up again. That interview also features the author of a book called The Inheritance. And I'm hoping that Sarah and Roz and I are going to maybe buddy read that one at some point, maybe later this year, because we were all three really interested in that book as well. But yeah, Shawn just does a great job with interviewing those two authors. So, okay, so links in the description. Let me know what's going on with you. Let me know if either of these books sound good to you. Let me know what you're reading. And I will be back to talk about some of the other things that I have read recently and what I, have picked up and what I'm maybe planning hopefully for the summer. And yeah. And I will say, because big books, I started middle March. So that's there on the pile with everything else. So I will get it read this summer. I may not be June, but I will get it read this summer. All right, so that's it. I will talk to you all again sometime soon, I hope. Okay, take care. Bye.